Welcome back to the MRPeasy Manufacturing Podcast. This episode is a live recording from an MRPeasy webinar, where we talk about how manufacturers can overcome the current labor shortage by building stronger systems instead of having to hire new people. Our guest is Sara Duff from Smart Manufacture, a UK-based manufacturing consultancy firm. Sara gives her insight into why process clarity beats additional headcount, how better production planning reduces firefighting, and real-world examples of manufacturers improving performance without hiring. Let's get started.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first MRPeasy webinar. So today we have Sara Duff here with us, and she's from Smart Manufacture in the UK. And we're going to talk about a topic that a lot of small, medium-sized manufacturers are dealing with, which is finding the right people. So Sara, maybe you could give a quick overview of your experience.
Thank you, firstly, Shane, for inviting me to join this webinar. It's an absolute pleasure. So a little bit about me. I'm Sara Duff. I'm the Commercial Director of Smart Manufacture. So we're an independent manufacturing consultancy and ERP specialist based in the UK. And we focus very much on working with small manufacturing companies who work across multiple sectors of manufacturing, whether they're make to order or they are make to stock or a hybrid. And what we're focused around is helping those companies to look at their end-to-end workflows and processes and help to see how we can streamline and automate what they're doing to really help them increase efficiency and productivity. So for us, it's all about helping manufacturing companies work smarter, not harder.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for joining us and appreciate the time. So we'll just dive into the topic right away. So one thing that a lot of people and businesses are struggling with is finding the right people to run their business or grow their manufacturing operations. So in this webinar, we're going to talk about this talent shortage, but it's not a webinar about how to hire the right people or where to find the right people, but it's about how to use automation and improve your systems so that you don't have to hire more people. So I have a first opening question for you, Sara. You work with a lot of manufacturers. So when people say we just need the right people, what are they usually struggling with?
Yeah, I think the challenge for manufacturing companies is the individuals they need to join their businesses must have some quite specific skill sets and experiences. So from a manufacturing perspective, they've got to have a broad spectrum of technical skill sets to be able to work, particularly for those on the shop floor. But also it's about behaviours. So very importantly, they've got to work within the sort of safety constraints, be very much attention to detail to deal with sort of quality and compliance. But also they very much have to have a team player attitude, a can-do, be able to sort of roll up their sleeves and muck in. And particularly that's key when manufacturing companies have peak periods, that it's all hands to the pump. So I think it's that combination of sort of skill sets and experience that is what people mean when they say we need the right people.
Okay, so they can't just hire anyone. They really need people with strong qualifications and basically the ambition to solve problems.
It is very much around, yes, problem solving as well as the sort of core manufacturing skill sets as well.
Okay, so maybe if you could, you have a lot of experience working with small and mid-sized manufacturers. So maybe you could give us like a little bit of insight into how what a company might be dealing with if they have a talent shortage.
Yeah, and I think a lot of small manufacturing companies are struggling with getting the right people into their organizations. So that's putting quite a lot of pressure on their existing teams, whether they're asking them to work sort of additional shifts, overtime. And unfortunately, when that pressure comes on, we're all human, errors creep in. Perhaps they're not spending as much time as they could adhering to safety protocols, making sure that they're doing all of the right quality checks. So errors come in, more scrap, more rework, leading then, unfortunately, in some cases to customer complaints. And even we've had manufacturing companies say through quality issues, they've even lost, a major customer through that period. So people become also very, very reactive. It's very, very firefighting type mentality. And sometimes people are losing the bigger picture in terms of looking at what jobs are even the right jobs they should be doing. It astounds me with some manufacturing companies, actually, they know they make money at the end of every month. But actually, when you look at jobs going around the shop floor, they can't actually tell you which are the jobs that are making me money. So perhaps, they're not spending enough time, looking strategically because of being so stretched operationally.
Okay, great. Thanks. Just on that note, I'll also launch a poll. And I also see we have Daniel from New York. Hi, Daniel. Just launch a poll here asking what are some of the biggest people-related challenges right now, and where does being short-staffed hurt your business the most? So if you want to answer that, maybe we can use these answers and work them into the webinar today. So most people, when they have problems, they don't have enough the right people to run their operations. The most common logic is that they just need to find the right people. But what we want to talk about is why hiring isn't always the answer, and how you can reduce the need to hire new people by having better systems. So maybe in your experience, using your experience, you could talk a little bit about why hiring new people can't compensate for weak or broken systems.
Yeah, I think that's the trouble. The answer isn't always about hiring new people, even if you can find those people with the right skills. Often what we've seen is companies bringing people in, then it's back to that firefighting, then they haven't got the right sort of processes and systems, the right onboarding, the right training, the right support. And sometimes they don't even provide immediate access to the systems. The PPE isn't available. They've got to go on various safety courses that are not made immediately available, and therefore that then the level of productivity that they're able to provide, it's taking longer and longer because those systems and processes and the supporting training, mentoring, and the support isn't always there or in the right form.
So this is your main role at the smart manufacturer, actually helping people implement ERP software so they can get better systems in place.
Absolutely, but what we always do first, and that comes back to my introduction, is always looking at that company in terms of the as-is processes and workflows first, in order that we can see how we can map an ERP system against those processes, but also not just look at the as is, but where are the current frustrations, the current challenges, not just from the MD, but actually operationally, because these are the guys and girls that are actually doing the job, in that working within that process, or sometimes lack of process, and therefore sometimes they have some great ideas in terms of how changes in processes, new ways of working would actually make them more efficient. So for us, it's about, yes, of course, listening to the MD and the board of directors, but also bringing everybody on board to see how what changes need to be made and how we can make their lives easier for the organization to drive up efficiency and productivity.
So I just have a quick follow-up question on that. How do you use ERP software to reduce the amount of manual coordination that you need within teams, like helping those teams work better and work smarter?
Yeah, and I think what an ERP system does for many small businesses actually is fundamentally it joins up the organization. So when we go into companies, so many small manufacturing companies are trying to operate with, multiple disparate spreadsheets with inaccurate, buried information, massive whiteboards, and also a lot of information still residing in people's heads. And they're all independently doing their own silos of work. work. And therefore, when somebody wants some information from another function in the business, they have to go across the shop floor, ask people for that information, and it can be quite a time-consuming and laborious process. Whereas when you put an ERP system in, the whole point of that is to join up the organization. So you've not got those silos anymore. You've got all of those functions working from a common system, and you've got the one version of the truth effectively in ERP language. So it cuts out so much of those, meetings, those phone calls to suppliers, chasing up raw materials, constantly having to schedule and reschedule jobs on a massive manual whiteboard. So it takes away an awful lot of that routine, mundane spreadsheet updating, and sort of manual chasing up.
So just one thought is that it could maybe reduce the need to hire administrative teams if everything is within one system. Is there any other ways that you'd see that it could reduce like the need to hire people?
Absolutely, and we've got an example of a company that we've fairly recently worked with that have grown their business by over 25%, without having to they've taken one or two additional people, but if they hadn't have had an ERP system like MRPeasy implemented, they would have only been able to achieve that growth with a significant amount of additional admin people to continually filling in spreadsheets, to continually update jobs on whiteboards. So certainly, yes, backed with the right sort of the right streamlined process as well, which is critical. And the discipline, that's the other point I would make with an ERP system. We have lots of small businesses complain about the amount of time they're filling out spreadsheets and all of this information being buried within the organization rather than having the top level visibility, which you get with an ERP system. Equally, there comes the discipline of utilizing the ERP system in the right way. And, it's the classic, if you're putting rubbish information in and the data isn't cleansed beforehand, unfortunately, the output of and the quality of that data will be compromised. So there is a degree of discipline. You've got to have your own part numbering systems. You've got to have your bombs. So there's some investment in the short term that organization has got to do, but in the medium to long term, they're going to reap the benefits of that.
So there's quite a bit of upfront work that has to be done. If you want to actually not hire more people, you still have to do put a lot of time and effort before using ERP software.
I would say you have to put some time and effort, and I think that's the challenge for a lot of small manufacturing businesses. They're still operating very much hand to mouth. There's lots of firefighting type activity, and we hear from MDs of small manufacturing companies that they get to the end of every day, they've been dealing with either employee issues, they've been dealing with supplier issues or customer issues. They get to that end of the day, they breathe a sigh of relief, they've got through that day, and then the next day starts. And they often say to us, we do want to look at ERP, but we're just so busy at the moment. Well, they're always going to be busy if they have that sort of frame of mind. So it is about investing in the short term a small amount of time aside to start looking at this sort of processes and workflows and the potential that an ERP system will bring to the business to get the medium or long term. Because if they don't do that, they'll still be doing this firefighting reactive behavior. And unfortunately, in the current market, they may not survive if they continue doing things the way they've always done it.
Okay, great. I actually have a follow-up question regarding that, but someone joined from Germany, so I just want to say hi and welcome to the webinar. So yeah, you were talking about how people can be apprehensive to use ERP software. So how do these concerns, like we're not ready or we're too small or any other concerns, what does it look like after people implement ERP software, and how is it different between what they might think and how the reality is after they use the software?
Yeah, I think I'll take the one in terms of we're too small, and I think that comes from, unfortunately, people's sort of lack of education in terms of the availability of ERP software. I think lots of small manufacturing companies have heard horror stories of larger ERP systems. I won't mention any names, but I think we probably all can think of one particular name when I'm mentioning that, where there've been very lengthy ERP implementation timeframes. And then even after that system or systems have been implemented, they haven't really delivered the value. And there's a view that, they're not always aware that there are systems like MRPeasy that have been specifically designed to fit the needs of small manufacturing companies. So there's an education piece there. Sometimes companies have a view that, we're sort of managing okay with our spreadsheets and our manual whiteboards, and well, let's just wait until we scale up and grow, and then we'll think about implementing these systems. Whereas if you're still relatively small before you're really getting those increased volumes, or you're bringing those new production lines, you've got a limited amount of staff that you've got to get used to that system. It's an awful lot easier than if you wait 20, 30 years when you've got 30 something plus spreadsheets, which one company we're working with has got. You've got all of that legacy data. The piece about we're not ready is again what I was referencing earlier, that it's again that companies are still looking at that short term. They've got to get the orders out the door, they've got to manage all these other issues that they're dealing with, and it's just they're not putting that time aside. Versus when we go in with small manufacturing companies, and after the work we've done and they've had the ERP system like MRPeasy implemented, we've had MDs saying, gosh, I just wish I'd done this years ago, for the ones that have been sort of established for a number of years. So I think it's an education piece, and also an open mindset as well. I would say that we have lots of organizations that know what we do, like the MTC, Made Smarter. They have programs where they're helping these companies to accelerate their adoption of digital technology. But nevertheless, still, there are sort of MDs of small manufacturing companies that have what I would call quite a closed mindset. They're used to doing things in a certain way, and they don't want to sort of make those changes. So sometimes that manifests itself in we're not ready, because they can't see that there's a different way of doing things.
And have you ever seen that after they implement software, they find challenges like hiring are gone? Or in your own experience, can you think of any companies where a company was struggling with hiring more talent and finding the right people, and then they implemented ERP software, and this problem was sort of gone?
I think we see companies that clearly are struggling for the right skill sets and the right talent. They've got forward-thinking MDs that do believe there's a different way of doing things, and they've been very, very surprised that maybe, like the company I referenced earlier, they do have to take one or two people, but whereas they would have probably had to take at least 10 people on if they were still filling out their multiple spreadsheets and trying to sort of manage with all of these disparate systems. So that is a common stance, but certainly they all, without any doubt, have been able to identify the positive impact it's had on their production efficiency. In some cases, the direct feedback they've had from their clients, because they're able to meet their delivery timeframes, they're able to communicate what's happening with jobs on the shop floor. So I think efficiency and productivity.
So it's more
Definitely.
of sort of the overall efficiency and productivity, and then just by this fact in itself, then you have to hire less people to sort of manage all these little aspects of the business.
Yeah, and I think also what's happening in the with new employment law that's coming into the UK. Last year we had quite a big increase in national insurance charges. A lot of small manufacturing companies, leaders are actually going, even if the right people, we could find the right people, which is already a challenge, as I've said earlier. But actually, the cost of taking those people on board, we're not going to start looking at hiring. We're going to find those alternative ways. We're going to look at how technology can be brought in to help us automate and do things in a different way.
Okay, that's a great point. Someone from London is asking where to search for the right people in manufacturing. they feel like it's not a popular field for younger people. Do you have any comments on that, or?
No, I do. It's something I'm very passionate about. So yes, unfortunately, the manufacturing industry with the younger generation isn't seen necessarily as an attractive sector to go and work in. I think there's some very old-fashioned views that all of the manufacturing is behind the times and, dirty, smelly industry to work in. Yes, there are parts of our industry that are like that, but there's some, fantastic organizations, with advanced manufacturing doing some really exciting innovation. But I think a lot of parents, my belief of, with children are pushing them to the always answer is let's send them to university rather than looking at apprenticeships and looking at manufacturing. So I think there's a lot of work to be done to redress that view, that perspective of the manufacturing industry. In terms of where do you find people, that is challenged, and certain geographies in the UK, or certain regions, I should say, it's harder to find those people, particularly for some of the advanced manufacturing that's going on. So it is a challenge. I would say to any small manufacturing companies, get involved with your local schools, your local colleges, go and portray the exciting work that you're doing as an organization to get those direct links with the younger generation, to infuse them to come into your business. And also importantly, market yourself correctly. I mean, I deal with lots of small manufacturing companies that are doing some wonderful work in terms of what they're manufacturing, but then you look at how they communicate via their websites, and that level of passion isn't quite there. So I would say sometimes, look at how you can portray yourself in a different way.
Okay, those are really really good tips. That's good to hear your experience and knowledge in this field. So we're just going to close up and had just a few closing questions for you. So maybe if you could give three, it doesn't have to be three, but if you could give some practical steps that manufacturers could take to reduce the pressure on their teams. Maybe if there's ways to improve systems, even if they're not ready for ERP software, but maybe there's some ways they could make their systems more efficient.
Yeah, I would say take a step back. So carve out, they've got busy diaries, but carve out some thinking time, some quality time where you can step back from the day-to-day operation and all the firefighting activity that you're doing. Look at what you're doing as a business, what customers and markets you're serving. Maybe you've served those for quite some considerable time. What is it that really creates the value for your customers? Where can you differentiate from your competition? Bring in the input from your staff as well, because sometimes that we see the MDs are a certain generation, like me, the same age. Perhaps they haven't come through school with, that knowledge of technology. Some of their younger generation that they bring into the organizations have that, that more open mindset in terms of doing things differently. They've got some great ideas. So I would definitely see bringing your staff in, having some conversations about what can be done differently, but also understand your current sort of workflows and processes. What are those blockers that are preventing you from increasing your output, going into new markets, and then start spending a little bit of time, looking at systems and software. MRPeasy is a perfect example of a system that actually can, has been designed specifically for small manufacturing companies. It's got, with its intuitive interface with a lot of functionality, there's the opportunity to trial the software, look at putting some data in, and getting going effectively with implementing it, at least initially. Even just to look at your inventory management, that can take some huge challenges away from having to do sort of manual stock takes, constant cycle counts, manage all of those discrepancies. So even in a small way, getting an ERP system, at least with inventory management rolled out, can make a big difference in a short time.
Okay, great. I'll just open up the questions too for some of our attendees too. So if you have any questions, just write them in the chat. And Sara has a lot of experience helping small manufacturers implement ERP software. So it's a really good chance to ask a question. Someone from Leeds is asking, we're implementing manufacturing software right now, but having serious pushback from employees. How can you make people accept change? Or, yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, resistance to change. I've always done it this way, is a big thing. How we do it, is, we make sure that when we're doing our initial sort of process mapping and we call it getting under the bonnet of that manufacturing company's business, because most of the conversations we've had will be one of the directors who can see the benefits that implementing an ERP system will bring to the business as a whole. But sometimes they overlook the challenges of, and particularly if they've had long-standing employees, they're quite set in their ways. So we always ensure that we've got all of those functional stakeholders involved in that process from day one, and for them to contribute. What are the frustrations they've got in how they're carrying out their work at the moment? Where would they see that a system could help them? But also explaining how MRPeasy, most of them by that stage understand why the business is bringing an ERP system, but they're fearful sometimes of their jobs. Is MRPeasy going to be brought in to remove them from doing that job, or is it, what's it going to do to them in terms of impacting their role? And I'll give you a classic example of a company that we work with. We had the MD who'd completely bought in. She'd done a huge amount of evaluation of MRPeasy, trialing it. So she was very clear that this was the system that she wanted that was going to completely transform the business. When we were doing the day on site, there were a couple of the salespeople, and they immediately said, we can understand. Their MD was also called Sara. We can understand why Sara is implementing MRPeasy for the business, but what about difference for us? And they'd explained to me that their frustration was typing the same information into 3 separate spreadsheets. So it was very clear for me to articulate that going forward, once MRPeasy has been implemented, you'll just be putting that information in once and once only. And I have to say, the smile that came on the sales guy's face about, gosh, that's going to save me so much time, but that time I can spend now on developing those customer relationships. So I think getting everybody involved at the outset, because yes, implementing an ERP system is a change management project, and you need to bring people on that journey with you and share what difference it's going to make to their own job as well as to the business as a whole, would be my advice.
It's a really good point, that a really good example you gave of telling the sales people how it will help them, because once people know what's in it for them, then I think it's a lot easier to make change if they see like an immediate benefit. So that's a really good tip. Just about wraps up today. It's just want to thank everyone for joining the first MRPeasy webinar, and especially thanks to Sara for taking the time to join us and share her knowledge and experience. I hope that everyone found it useful. We'll be running upcoming webinars, so you can sign up to our newsletter or join our social media channels, and we'll keep you updated on when our next webinar is. We'll also send you a follow-up email. So if you have any feedback or you have any ideas for future webinar topics, you can fill out a survey, and we'll try to incorporate your ideas into our next webinars. So that's it for today. Thanks again, Sara. Did you have anything to say, or?
Well, I think I've covered quite a lot of ground. So if anybody has found obviously what I was saying interesting, or would like to sort of share any experiences or ask any additional questions that we haven't already answered, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to follow up with yourselves. But Shane, it remains me to thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk on this webinar, and I hope your audience found it useful.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. And thanks to the audience also for joining, and hope to see you next time.
That wraps up this episode of the MRPeasy podcast. Thanks for tuning in. For more information, go to mrpeasy.com. See you next time.